And then we have my dogs. We get back on track with a win against Auburn. We won this 31-13, and good win for Georgia. I did, as you saw in that clip earlier, I did have this and the Alabama Vanderbilt game as trap games because these are two, after you play a big team, it's just so much that goes into it. It feels like the world is talking about it. It takes so much out of you. It drains you, especially to lose a game in that fashion like that. And then you go play this unranked team. For Georgia, it was at home. You think like we just competed with Alabama like that. We'll walk through this team. And so, just an easy game for them to overlook and get shocked, as we saw with Bama. But they were able to pull it out. But here is my takeaway from the Georgia and Auburn game. And this may be a hot take, this may be controversial, but here's what I'm seeing. I think that there needs to be a sense of urgency for Georgia at this point. Georgia came out and they were able to score on their first drive, which was really what I was looking for. I wanted to see this team get off to better, quicker starts offensively. I said it before, and the things that you do or are able to get away with against mediocre or bad teams, you cannot do against good teams. We saw 2 weeks before the Alabama game, Georgia just looked sluggish, couldn't get going, escaped against Kentucky. We then saw that Kentucky team go and upset Ole Miss the very next week. And then you go in Alabama, get off to a slow start, and now you're down 28-0. Alabama isn't going to let you hang around and get it together. They're coming out and they're attacking. You play a team like Kentucky, although they did beat Ole Miss, they're of a lesser caliber than a team like Alabama. And you're able to hang around there with field goals, and your defense was able to hold. And you cannot do that against good teams. And so they get out and score on that first drive. And I am very happy about that. But then nothing else happens. And then it turns out to be a 7-3 pretty much for the whole first half. Georgia ends up scoring with like 11 seconds left in the second quarter, just before halftime, to make it 14-3. But nonetheless, another slow start for Georgia. And the reason I think there needs to be a level of urgency here now, and again, this is probably right under I'm concerned, there needs to be a level of urgency, is because after you were getting belt to butt in the first half by Alabama, you would think like, all right, guys, we cannot play around. We got to come out here and immediately enforce our will. We got to get off to better starts offensively. You play a team, again, of a lesser caliber than the team you just played, and it's the same result. That tells me this isn't a focus thing. This isn't probably even an effort thing. This may be we can't get off to good starts. You may be incapable of doing it, meaning any given Saturday, if a team, you just want to come out and get off to these slow starts, it doesn't matter if it's Auburn or Alabama or Texas, you're going to get embarrassed because some of these teams aren't going to let you hang around and hang in the games. And you're going to get a repeat of that. You have got to get off to better starts. And again, I am not one of those fans who thinks that anybody besides Texas and Alabama, Georgia should be beating by 35 points because nobody can. No, obviously not. Every game isn't going to be a blowout or anything, but you do want to see some fluidity to the offense. I don't want to continue to see three and outs, and now it's a 14-10 football game against Auburn, and we're like, oh, shoot, what's happening? Is Georgia going to win? What are we doing? And then eventually we get it going and rolling. And there was a time in that football game, I think when it went up 14-10, I think Hunter, for the running back for Auburn, took off for that big touchdown run. There you could see, and they even mentioned it in the game, Auburn got a confidence of like, we can hang with these guys. We can run on their defense. That's the other thing. The run defense doesn't seem incredible. Auburn was able to run without a lot of resistance throughout that entire game. So I was um, happy about the win. A win is a win, but disappointed that this was another slow start after the debacle of a first half we saw against a rival and a competitive team. That was, you just have to get off to better starts. And so you don't think I'm pulling this out of a hat. And Georgia is 4-1 now. Week 1, Georgia was up 6-0 against Clemson. We ended up pulling away and winning it by a lot. The second week we played Tennessee Tech. It's a cupcake game. Throw that out the window. Week 3, we were down at the half 6-3. Ended up winning that game 13-12. And then week 4, of course, or our fourth game, we were down 30-7 at the half against Alabama, as we know. And this game against Auburn, we were up 14-3 at the half, but 7-3 for the majority of the half until 11 seconds left in the first half, like I mentioned. So that is an area of concern. If Georgia is incapable of finding some chemistry and some flow with this offense, we are now approaching week 7, basically the halfway point, just over the regular season. And I'm still asking questions about who's the guy for Georgia. I think Dominique Lovett. Like, where's Oscar Dope? We Trevor Etienne, he's great, but there just seems to be a lack of identity and chemistry and flow to the offense to start off games. I've always compared it to just this car that it's like it's cold outside, and before you start driving, you got to go turn on the engine and then let it sit for a while. Let it get warmed up, let it get all nice and comfy, and then you can drive it. That's how Georgia's offense plays every single week. And then again, these other teams, the reason most people will see 31-13, what are we complaining about? It's because I saw 13-12 the week before we play Alabama, 2 weeks before we play Alabama, which led to 30-7 in the first half. They say you don't accept what you wouldn't in a loss and a win. And so these are things, listen, we have Texas in a couple of weeks. We have to figure that out. Texas will not hesitate to make this another 30-7 loss. And guess who's going to come out more focused, because they know Georgia's going to try to make that run. And then we do get beat 70-3. Like, Georgia has to figure that out, man. That is an area that needs urgency. I am holding off on saying concern, but you can probably hear it in my voice. So that was my takeaway. Nonetheless, happy that UGA was able to get the win. But at the end of the day, we know that Georgia has the third toughest schedule in the country, and their season is going to come down to 4 games. Alabama, which we've already played, Texas, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. Obviously, it's the theme of this show is any given Saturday. So not overlooking any of those other teams, but if all is equal and we take care of business, that's what the season is going to come down to. And our success is going to come down to our placing, whether we're a bowl team or a college football playoff team. That's what it's going to come down to. If you want to be a college football playoff team, you can't strike out in those games. You can't lose all four of those. You can't lose four games. And we have four losable games on our schedule. So, and we already lost one of them. So you lose to Alabama, and then we got Texas, who is the number one team in the country now, and we have to go and see them. Then you got Ole Miss. They are not a pushover whatsoever. They're not going to let you hang around and get off to these slow starts and think you're just going to got to figure it out. And then Tennessee, like these are Georgia, I think to feel super comfortable, you want to win. You want to win the rest of these. You want to win 3 out of 4 to know like, okay, we should have a spot in the college football playoff with 3 or 4 of those wins. 2 is like, gosh, I don't know what that was about. 2 of 4 of those wins are you're pushing it. You're pushing it. I mean, and then it's like, who is it against? And where are those teams ranked when we get to them? Like, it's just urgency is needed here for Georgia, and that's what it's going to come down to. Those 4 games, we all know it. The other thing was Nate Frazier. I think he is a spark plug for Georgia, and I think he has to get more playing time. I know that he is a freshman, but every time he touches the ball, he's electric. He has a different burst to them. He has that DeAndre Swift type of shiftiness to him. And I think he's just a spark plug for our team that we need to incorporate a lot more. And I would like to see Georgia stick to the run a little bit more. We have a really good running back with Trevor Etienne, and I like what I see in Nate Frazier as well. And don't forget about Dylan Bell. Like we know what he can do, as well as just kind of that joker, that athlete player. So I did like what I saw from the spurts of Nate Frazier. Would definitely like to see him involved more. And then one that was interesting was Kirby's statements after the game. Spoke to being disappointed in the fans. And I know some fans, some of them will get on their high horse, like, we play your salary, and who are you to say maybe if we have a better performance? But I, like, as a Georgia fan, and I wasn't at this game, but I thought that was a fair critique. And I do think that coaches should call out fans. I think one, it'll get them like you'll give them something to work for. But a lot of these schools who are big dogs, while you try to keep your players focused and like don't play the name of the team, go out here and play this game like it's the championship. The fans are a part of the program too. They see it as well. Like, oh, we're just playing Mississippi State this week. Like, we'll go for a couple quarters and then we'll go back to our dorms. Like, we're gonna be blowing them out by the second. Like, they treat it the same way too. I saw someone read like the student section was like a quarter of the way filled. I mean, Kirby spoke to like he couldn't get crowd noise. He's trying to make this a tough environment to play in, and the fans may seem a little uninterested. I do think, and he acknowledged, like he knows he has to do a better job coaching. I think he's doing a fine job, but I do think, as I mentioned before, there are things we need to address. So I think some of that is probably due to that. Like it was a 14-10 game in the third quarter against Auburn, and we're just kind of like, what's going on? We're having three and out drives, just not looking fluid as an offense at all. And so there wasn't a ton to just cheer for. And I feel like that would be the fans' rebuttal to that. But I also do think, listen, like I said, the fans are a part of the program too. We have to show up as well. We don't want teams to just be able to come in here and like, oh, okay, we can get our play calls out. It's not really a hostile environment. It's a big stadium, but it's not as bad as I thought. Like you wanna make a deafening hostile environment for the opponents, no matter who we're playing. And so if you can't get that, I think that's super fair for Kirby to call out and expect for the fans. Because again, fans are a part of the program too. So that was an interesting one.